They say most betrayals happen in silence. Mine came with a smirk, a paper cup of overpriced coffee, and a phrase I'll remember longer than the birth dates of my own children. You're Windows XP in a quantum lab, pal. Time to modernize. My name is Raymond Vexley. I'm 57 years old, and until 9:17 a.m. this morning, I was the systems architect at Halberd Dynamics, a B2B software firm with a valuation north of $3.2 billion. And for the past 28 years, I kept the lights on in this building without ever once asking to stand in them. I built our first data warehouse when AWS was still a rumor. I wrote the invoice pipeline that handled over $500 million in transactions last fiscal year. I maintained our core API when we scaled from 50 clients to 5,000. Every senior developer who made it big at Halberd learned their trade by reading code with my fingerprints on it. I never needed a corner office. Never asked for a title change. Never complained when new CTOs came in with their agile workflows and cloud-native slogans, because no matter what trend they chased, they all needed one thing: me. That morning started like every other for the last 2 decades. I parked on the 3rd floor, used the side entrance, badge still functional, and walked the quiet hallway to my cubicle. Most of the team wouldn't be in for another hour. I preferred it that way. Peace and silence. No meetings, no chatter, just me and the machines humming in the background like a familiar choir. I was already deep in a recursive loop fix on our tax logic when Dorian shuffled past my desk. Sunglasses on, latte in hand, dressed like he got lost between a golf course and a TED Talk. Dorian Clay. My boss for the last 18 months. Appointed after our previous director retired early and left a vacuum. Dorian filled it with buzzwords and nepotism. "Ray," he called, voice too loud for an open office. "Got a sec?" I minimized the terminal window and followed him into conference room beta, where the blinds were drawn and the AC always whined a little louder than it should. He didn't sit, just leaned against the edge of the table like he was waiting to audition for Shark Tank. "Quarterly sync," he said. "Let's keep it casual." He launched into numbers, growth targets, engagement metrics, client churn percentages. I nodded through it, already sensing something was off. Then he dropped the line. That line. "You're Windows XP in a quantum lab." He laughed, expecting me to laugh too. I didn't. "I'm reassigning the enterprise accounts," he added. "I want fresher eyes on them. Martin will take over." Martin Clay, his cousin, fresh out of Wharton with a concentration in strategic innovation and no production experience. The kid still asked what Git was during team stand-ups. "I didn't realize I was under review," I said calmly. "You're not," Dorian replied. "This is about evolution. You've been incredible, Ray, really. But I need you to think about the bigger picture. Recharge. Maybe take some of that PTO. You've earned it." PTO. That's corporate hospice care, a way to keep your badge warm while they find a cheaper version of you with a TikTok account. I went back to my desk, tried to resume the loop fix, but my fingers hovered over the keyboard. My body moved like everything was normal, but nothing felt normal. I checked my inbox. No email, no memo. Just silence. The kind that grows teeth if you don't look it in the eye. At 3:08 p.m., the screen flickered. Session expired. I tried to log back in. Access denied. I thought maybe the VPN had dropped. Reconnected. Same result. I opened the company IT portal. My heart was calm, but my hands felt distant. I clicked on my own user profile. A red lock icon blinked at the top. Ticket Duggar 89423. Access privileges revoked per executive directive. Status closed. No explanation. No call. Not even a courtesy Slack message. Just like that, I was gone. But here's the thing about being the guy who built the system. You never really leave it. Not all of you. The parking garage was a hollow echo chamber after hours, concrete walls swallowing the sound of my footsteps as I made my way to the back stairwell. I hadn't been inside Halberd Dynamics after sunset in years. But old habits don't die, they archive. You don't give your life to a machine without remembering every door it ever opened for you. They'd revoked my credentials, sure, digital ones. But no one thought to ask for the keycard on my ring or the analog brass key that still unlocked the south entrance. When you've been somewhere long enough, you become part of the architecture. The hallway lights buzzed with low-voltage hums, motion sensors catching up to my presence one by one. It was close to midnight. Security made their rounds every 2 hours. I had 40 minutes before someone might notice. I wasn't there to vandalize or scream or torch the place. I just wanted to see for myself what they were building without me. The office was dark except for the CEO's corner suite. Lights on, blinds half open. A stack of printed paper sat on the hallway printer, still warm. Curiosity beat caution. I pulled the pages free and started flipping. Q3 Strategic Vision. Infrastructure Redefined. The Halberd logo, all clean lines and navy gradients, sat above a bulleted list of features that looked all too familiar. Microservice orchestration, legacy disaggregation, real-time billing elasticity. My work, my system, regurgitated in boardroom vocabulary and passed off as the next big thing. I flipped to the appendix. Diagrams of architecture layouts. Same foundation I'd built 10 years ago. They didn't change the ports. They didn't touch the sequencing. They slapped on buzzwords and called it evolution. The authors listed at the top: Dorian Clay, CTO; Martin Clay, Director of Strategic Product; Micro, Replacement; his cousin, the kid who couldn't even install a local server without calling support; the same one who lost our biggest client in under an hour last week. Or so I heard. That client, Westmont Global, had been with us for 7 years. They'd gone silent after the transition. Internally, the buzz was they ghosted. Nobody dared to say Martin mishandled the handoff. Instead, they whispered about product-market friction and a pivot phase. Anything but incompetence. But I remembered that client. I remembered when their back-end vendor went under mid-quarter. I stayed up for 72 hours rebuilding their schema from scratch. Got them back online in 4 days flat. I flew to Dallas on a red-eye just to shake their CIO's hand and say, "We've got you." I earned that loyalty one keystroke at a time. And now it was vapor. I folded the deck and slipped it into my bag. No alarms, no drama. Just one more ghost slipping through an office no longer mine. At home, I poured coffee I didn't need and pulled my old ThinkPad out of the bottom drawer. It was scratched and battered, the trackpad worn shiny, booted like a tired soldier. I bypassed my local DNS and tunneled into a sandbox server we used to use for pre-prod testing, a forgotten relic. No one ever decommissioned it. I typed the root key I hadn't used in years. The cursor blinked. Access granted. Just like that, I was back inside the nervous system. Not the mainframe, not yet. Just a shadow limb of the beast I once built. I started mapping connections. The integrations were still intact. The security protocols hadn't evolved. They'd painted the house, but left the foundation untouched. They didn't understand the system. Not really. I opened a script library, buried deep in version control, untouched since 2015. A series of test routines I'd written for stress simulation. I modified the headers, gave each one a trigger. Nothing malicious, not yet, just pressure, delays, lag. The kind that starts rumors in Slack channels and sparks whispers in Monday meetings. I set a timer, 7 days. That's all I gave myself. Then I closed the lid and turned out the light. No plan yet, no rage, just the knowledge of where the bones were buried, and that I still had the shovel. Martin stood in front of the touchscreen wall like he was pitching the cure for gravity. Hair gelled, sleeves rolled, voice smooth from too many rehearsals. "This," he said, tapping through a mock dashboard with fake data feeds, "is Halberd's next evolution. A fully containerized migration architecture built from the ground up with elasticity and resilience in mind." I watched from my couch, coffee in hand, the live stream feed pulsing in a browser tab. I'd muted the applause. It sounded too much like a lie. Behind Martin, graphs loaded, except now they hesitated, not crashed, just stuttering. A little lag on the refresh. A 404 flicker in the top right panel before the data reloaded. Subtle. Insidious. 2 days earlier, I'd activated the first of the pressure scripts. None of them destructive. Not yet. Just enough interference to trigger discomfort. API call loops slowing from milliseconds to full seconds. A buried command that rerouted a single variable through a deprecated path, just long enough to throw off an internal timing calculation. And always randomized, never the same point of failure twice. At first, it would look like bad Wi-Fi, then it would look like doubt. Martin glanced back at the lagging chart, smiled like he'd meant for that to happen, and kept going. We've sunset legacy dependencies, removed monolithic choke points, and layered in predictive redundancy across every data surface. It was like watching a freshman give a thesis defense he paid someone else to write. Somewhere in that building, a junior developer named Tasha was watching her alerts stack up. Her logs were lighting up with inconsistencies that didn't make sense. Timestamps off by full seconds. Sync jobs timing out. She'd already emailed her team lead. The subject line read, "Odd behavior in prod. Possible regression." She hadn't heard back. I'd seen the email. I was inside the mirror image sandbox, watching packet routes in real time. They still hadn't unplugged it. They didn't know it was even running, which meant I had a view of their whole internal skeleton, the bones they forgot I placed there. Back when I built the billing pipeline, I hit a redundancy bypass that activated during load testing. It wasn't malice. It was defense, a way to simulate pressure without risking outages. I buried it behind an innocuous command string, audit cache false. No one had touched it in over a decade, until now. I'd activated the bypass 3 hours before the demo. The system thought it was running under stress test mode, which meant it deprioritized background tasks, including the sync queue, which meant the live dashboards Martin was showing were 28 seconds behind real time. Enough to look off, but not enough to raise alarms with anyone who didn't understand how much precision our clients demanded. And Martin didn't. The board of directors sat in that demo room, watching numbers fail to refresh, watching tables momentarily blink empty before reloading. Their expressions didn't shift. Not yet, but they were noticing. Dorian, my former boss, leaned in behind Martin, whispering something. Martin nodded too fast, covered it with another line of techno syrup. "We're doing some light toggling behind the scenes," he said. "Sunsetting legacy functions as we go. You might notice a hiccup or two, growing pains." He said that phrase a lot now. Growing pains. That's what he called the Westmont fallout. $1 million contract dropped without warning when the reporting dashboard failed to load during their quarterly close. I still remember rebuilding that dashboard from scratch 7 years ago after a firmware update wiped out a third-party connector. I worked 39 straight hours to bring it back online. No thanks, no applause. Just a thank you email from the CFO with the subject line. Didn't even notice it broke. That was the point. Legacy isn't loud, it's quiet, invisible, taken for granted until it isn't there. I took another sip of coffee. The script timers ticked forward. 3 more days before phase 2. Still just pressure for now. No fire. I wanted them to stew in uncertainty. The worst pain isn't collapse. It's the realization that the collapse has already started. And you missed it. The night before the pitch, I barely slept. I sat at the kitchen table with my ThinkPad humming like an old heart, screen light flickering against half-empty coffee cups. The city outside was quiet except for the occasional siren, that low, distant wail that sounds like someone else's problem. Not tonight. Tonight, it was mine, and theirs. Halberd Dynamics was about to sell a future built on stolen bones, and I intended to remind them what their foundation was made of. I opened my terminal window and watched the timers tick down. Each script had been sleeping quietly, nested inside harmless audit functions, waiting for the right chain of events to wake them. In 2 hours, the system would begin preloading demo data for the investors' presentation. That was my window. My code was designed to piggyback on that process. When the servers started prepping their synthetic numbers, the backup routines would redirect the output into null space, overwriting pointers with dummy references. Nothing catastrophic, not yet. Just a slow bleed of coherence. At 2:07 a.m., the first script activated. Billing engine stalled. I watched the logs scroll, lines of text I'd written years ago now dancing in elegant chaos. The system thought it was running perfectly. It even reported normal metrics. But the invoices it generated were empty shells, self-referencing placeholders. A snake eating its own tail. By 4 a.m., the reporting API began to corrupt itself, checksum mismatches stacking like bricks. Backup snapshots rotated automatically, except they weren't real backups anymore. They pointed to ghost directories, full of decoy datasets, redundancy that wasn't redundant. A perfect illusion of safety. I closed my eyes and listened to the fan spin faster. I wasn't angry. I was deliberate. You don't destroy what you built out of rage. You dismantle it piece by piece, with precision. My scripts weren't viruses. They were memory, echoes of what they'd erased when they decided the man who built the system didn't belong in it anymore. At 8:45 a.m., Halberd's offices were awake, caffeinated, and buzzing. The company's internal chat stream was full of pep messages. Let's crush it today. Big day, team. The kind of forced optimism that smells like fear. In the conference room, Martin Clay was probably rehearsing his lines for the 10th time, still not understanding the machinery he was about to present. 8:57. The systems began syncing live data for the demo. I could almost feel the hum of the servers through my fingertips. 8:59. 1 minute before showtime. Every monitor inside Halberd Dynamics blinked once, like a heartbeat, and a message filled every active session. Bold white letters against a black screen. You deleted the man who built the recovery plan. Good luck. 9 o'clock. The demo began, and died on impact. Database tables collapsed. Foreign key dependencies folding into null values. Client dashboards refreshed to empty grids, then 404'd completely. Transaction pipelines froze mid-operation, queues locking in dead loops. Inside the internal chat, panic bloomed like wildfire. Prod down. Is this a DDoS? Roll back! Roll back! There was nothing to roll back to. Every backup pointed to smoke. The investors didn't scream. They didn't need to. They stood, silent, closed their notebooks, and left the room like surgeons walking away from a body that couldn't be saved. On the livestream feed, Martin's smile cracked for the first time. His voice wavered. We're, seeing some unexpected regression behavior, just a minor caching issue. He gestured toward the projection screen, where the source control log now displayed a highlighted commit. Revenant restore. Never forget. The irony landed like shrapnel. Somewhere behind him, Dorian was pacing, phone in hand, barking at IT to get Raymond on the line. I saw the call come through, 2 rings. I let it hit voicemail. Then I spoke. Calm, flat, final. You're right, Dorian. I am Windows XP, but XP never crashed. You just forgot who kept the lights on. I ended the call. By the time I looked back at the terminal, the logs had gone still. The scripts had done their work, quiet as surgeons. Halberd Dynamics wasn't dead yet, but it was bleeding from every artery, and I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The building looked different in daylight, less like a temple and more like what it had always been. Glass and steel pretending to be important. I hadn't set foot in Halberd Dynamics since the demo collapsed. That was 3 days ago. In that time, 5 clients had walked, the internal Slack had gone into lockdown, and the SEC had issued a preliminary inquiry into irregularities in financial reporting and infrastructure disclosures. I hadn't expected it to move that fast. But then again, I hadn't expected any of this. I wore a navy suit I hadn't touched in 5 years. No tie, just clean pressed lines and silence. The front desk receptionist recognized me, but didn't say a word. She just buzzed me through. Maybe she knew. Maybe they all did. The boardroom was full when I arrived. 11 chairs, 10 filled. Dorian sat near the head. Bags under his eyes and a fresh shave that couldn't hide the panic behind his collar. Martin sat 2 seats over, typing on his phone like none of this concerned him. He didn't look up when I walked in. I didn't sit. I placed a manila envelope on the table. Thick, neat, labeled in bold black ink. Whistleblower submission. This contains every vendor kickback Dorian's approved over the last 4 years. The ghost contracts signed under shell firms. Every altered report issued under Martin's project pipeline. And a list of clients poached illegally under falsified engagement terms. They stared. I kept my hands folded in front of me. It's already been submitted to the SEC, time-stamped, documented. I kept it sealed until now because I thought, maybe, you'd grow into the responsibility you inherited. But then you removed me like I was a line of deprecated code. Silence rolled through the room like smoke. One of the board members, a woman I'd seen only in passing over the years, leaned forward and opened the envelope. She started pulling out the documentation. Contracts, emails, screenshots, invoice trails. Another member began scanning the printed logs. Within minutes, murmurs turned into full conversations. The air shifted. This wasn't a performance anymore. It was evidence. Martin finally looked up. "You can't just show up and—" "You're done," said the woman with the file. Her voice cut clean across the table. "This isn't a conversation." Dorian stood up like he could still salvage control. "Let's be reasonable. This is all hearsay unless—" "Shut up," said the chair. His voice was tired. "Final. You've jeopardized every part of this company with your shortcuts and your pride. We'll take this behind closed doors, but you won't be here after lunch." Martin's phone buzzed. He looked down and paled. The chair turned to me. "Do you want compensation? Legal damages?" "No." I looked out the window at the street, people walking by like nothing was ending. That's the trick with collapse. From the outside, it looks like Tuesday. "I'm not here for money. You can't buy back what you lost." I picked up the envelope lid and slid it back into place, neat as a file archive. You can't replace loyalty with hype. The machine remembers. No one stopped me when I left. There were no guards, no threats, just silence. Dorian didn't even raise his head. Martin started packing his laptop into a bag he wouldn't be allowed to keep. I walked past the receptionist. She nodded once. I nodded back. That night I pulled out the last printed schematic I had. The original design. 8 pages. Annotated in pencil, edges frayed from handling. I took it outside and lit a match. Watched it curl black at the edges, fold in on itself, and vanish into smoke. A Viking funeral for legacy code. There was no sadness, no triumph, just the weightlifting. Sometimes revenge is loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet deletion of your own name from a system that thought it owned you. I went inside, shut down the ThinkPad, and wiped the drive. No backups, no fail-safes, just exit code 0. System finished, no errors.